For decades, the automotive world has followed a familiar pattern. The biggest breakthroughs usually come from legendary brands with century-old reputations, billion-dollar research budgets, and armies of engineers working behind closed doors. But every once in a generation, a technology appears that forces the entire industry to stop and reconsider what it thought was possible. And according to independent testing and international verification, one company has just delivered exactly that kind of moment. What you're about to see isn't another flashy concept car or an experimental engine that will never leave the laboratory. This is production technology, real hardware, something already making its way into vehicles that ordinary people can actually buy. And the numbers attached to it are so extraordinary that many enthusiasts initially assumed they had to be exaggerated. Because while most gasoline engines sold around the world typically operate with thermal efficiency between 30 and 40%, this new powertrain has officially achieved an astonishing 48.41% thermal efficiency, one of the highest figures ever recorded for a mass-produced automotive engine. To put that into perspective, some of the most sophisticated hybrid systems from Toyota and Honda have spent years gradually climbing into the mid 40% range. Crossing the 48% threshold was once considered an engineering target that might take another decade to achieve. Yet somehow, one manufacturer reached it sooner than many experts expected. And that's where this story becomes truly fascinating. The company behind this achievement is Geely, one of China's largest automotive groups, a corporation that sold more than 3.3 million vehicles globally in 2025 through brands including Volvo, Zeekr, Lynk & Co., and Geely Auto itself. While many Americans may not instantly recognize the name, Geely's influence already stretches across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and increasingly into emerging markets. In fact, the company acquired Volvo Cars back in 2010, transforming what many viewed as a risky purchase into one of the most successful international automotive partnerships of the modern era. At the center of this breakthrough sits the BH15 engine, developed for Geely's latest generation intelligent hybrid system. On paper, it's a relatively compact 1.5-liter power plant, but internally, it represents years of obsessive refinement. Engineers focused on reducing friction losses, improving combustion precision, optimizing air intake, and maximizing energy extraction from every drop of fuel. The result wasn't just a small improvement, it was a leap large enough to attract global attention. And perhaps the most surprising part of all is that this achievement didn't come from a company with a 100-year legacy in automobiles. It began with a man who grew up far from the luxury headquarters and engineering centers traditionally associated with the car industry. Li Shufu, born in 1963 in Zhejiang province, came from humble beginnings. There was no family empire waiting for him and no automotive dynasty to inherit. During the early years of China's economic reforms, opportunities were limited and resources were scarce. In the mid-1980s, with financial support reportedly equivalent to only a few $1,000s, he launched a small manufacturing business producing refrigerator components. At the time, nobody could have imagined that this modest operation would eventually evolve into one of the world's largest automotive groups. Throughout the 1990s, Li Shufu became convinced that China's future would be defined by private industry and technological independence. In 1997, Geely officially entered automobile manufacturing, competing against state-backed giants with far greater resources. Many analysts dismissed the company as an underdog with little chance of surviving, let alone competing internationally. But Geely had a different philosophy. Instead of attempting to dominate overnight, the company focused on learning, acquiring technology, and building partnerships. That long-term approach eventually led to investments in Volvo, Lotus, Polestar, Smart, and several other globally recognized brands. By the mid-2020s, Geely had quietly assembled one of the most diverse automotive portfolios anywhere in the world. And while headlines around the globe focused almost exclusively on battery electric vehicles, Geely's engineers pursued another question entirely. What if the internal combustion engine still had untapped potential? For years, many experts believed gasoline engines had already reached their practical limits. Incremental improvements, yes. Revolutionary gains, no. But Geely's engineering teams disagreed. They believed that with advanced combustion control, ultra-high compression strategies, improved exhaust energy recovery, and next-generation hybrid integration, efficiency levels, once considered unrealistic, could actually become achievable. Most companies were chasing bigger batteries. Geely decided to chase every lost molecule of energy. And eventually, that obsession produced numbers that forced even competitors to pay attention. And the deeper you look into how they accomplished it, the more remarkable the story becomes. To understand why the BH15 engine is generating so much discussion among engineers, you first have to understand a simple reality that governs every gasoline-powered vehicle on Earth. Most of the energy inside fuel never reaches the wheels. A large percentage disappears as heat through the exhaust system, the cooling system, and internal friction. For more than a century, automakers have been fighting this invisible enemy, searching for ways to convert a greater portion of fuel into usable power. That's why thermal efficiency has become one of the most important measurements in modern automotive engineering. Every single percentage point is incredibly difficult to achieve. Moving from 40% to 41% can require years of development and millions of dollars in research. Going beyond 45% was once considered territory reserved for highly specialized systems. Yet Geely's engineers reportedly spent thousands of hours analyzing combustion patterns, fuel atomization, and airflow behavior inside the cylinders. The company introduced extremely high-pressure fuel injection, advanced exhaust gas recirculation strategies, and sophisticated electronic controls capable of adjusting engine parameters in fractions of a second. Combined with hybrid assistance, the entire system was designed to operate within its most efficient range as often as possible. The result was an engine capable of extracting nearly half of the energy contained inside every gallon of fuel, a figure that places it among the most efficient production combustion engines ever developed. And the timing couldn't be more interesting. For the last several years, much of the global conversation has revolved around fully electric vehicles. Governments announced ambitious emissions targets. Manufacturers invested hundreds of billions of dollars into battery development. According to the International Energy Agency, worldwide EV sales surpassed 17 million units annually by the middle of the decade, representing one of the fastest technology transitions in automotive history. But despite that momentum, reality proved more complicated. Charging infrastructure remains uneven in many regions. Battery costs, although falling dramatically compared with a decade ago, still affect vehicle affordability. In the United States, concerns about charging times and long-distance travel continue to influence consumer decisions. Surveys conducted by organizations like AAA have repeatedly shown that range anxiety remains one of the biggest obstacles preventing some buyers from switching entirely to electric vehicles. That's where highly efficient hybrid systems suddenly become incredibly important. Instead of forcing drivers to choose between gasoline and electricity, companies like Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and now Geely are developing technologies that combine the advantages of both. A modern hybrid can deliver impressive fuel economy, lower emissions, and extended driving range without depending entirely on charging networks, and this strategy is producing real-world results. Toyota sold millions of hybrid vehicles globally in recent years, proving that many consumers still value flexibility above all else. In some markets, hybrids are growing faster than fully electric vehicles because buyers appreciate having electric assistance without sacrificing convenience. Geely clearly recognized that trend. Rather than treating hybrid technology as a temporary bridge, the company viewed it as a long-term competitive weapon. The BH15 engine wasn't designed merely to survive the EV era, it was designed to redefine what hybrids could achieve. And perhaps the biggest surprise is that this breakthrough didn't happen in isolation. China's automotive industry itself has undergone one of the most remarkable transformations in modern manufacturing history. 20 years ago, Chinese brands were often dismissed by international critics. Today, the country has become the world's largest automobile producer, manufacturing more than 30 million vehicles annually and investing enormous resources into batteries, software, semiconductors, and advanced powertrain technologies. Competition inside China has become so intense that companies are now forced to innovate at extraordinary speed. New models arrive faster. Research cycles are shorter. Technologies that once took years to commercialize can sometimes appear in production vehicles in a fraction of that time. And that environment may be exactly what allowed Geely to pursue ideas that more established manufacturers considered too difficult, too expensive, or simply too risky. Because behind every major breakthrough lies a question that most people never ask. How far can the internal combustion engine really go? Many engineers believe we may still be years away from discovering the absolute limit, and if Geely's latest achievement is any indication, the answer could surprise everyone. But perhaps the most fascinating part of this entire story isn't the number itself. It's what that number represents for the future of the automotive industry. For years, analysts predicted a simple ending: gasoline engines out, electric vehicles in. Yet the reality unfolding in 2026 looks far more complicated. Instead of one technology replacing another overnight, manufacturers are entering an era where multiple solutions are competing simultaneously. Fully electric vehicles continue expanding. Plug-in hybrids are gaining popularity. Traditional hybrids remain strong. And increasingly efficient combustion engines are proving they still have room to evolve. In many ways, this resembles the early days of aviation. Engineers once believed propeller aircraft had reached their limits, only to witness decades of additional innovation. The same principle applies to automobiles. History repeatedly shows that technologies rarely disappear when people expect them to. They improve, adapt, and sometimes come back stronger than anyone imagined. And Geely's achievement is already sending a message far beyond China. Major automakers around the world are paying close attention. Toyota has continued investing heavily in hybrid systems. Honda's next-generation eHEV technology focuses on improving efficiency even further. Hyundai and Kia are expanding their hybrid portfolios. Even companies that once planned aggressive all-electric transitions have recently adjusted their strategies to include multiple powertrain options. The reason is simple. Consumers ultimately decide which technologies survive. In the United States alone, hybrid sales have experienced steady growth over the last several years. Many drivers appreciate the ability to travel hundreds of miles without worrying about charging stations while still enjoying lower fuel consumption. For families, commuters, and long-distance travelers, practicality often matters more than headlines. And that's exactly why breakthroughs like the BH15 matter. A gain of just 1 or 2 percentage points in efficiency may sound insignificant to the average driver, but across millions of vehicles, the impact becomes enormous. Lower fuel consumption means reduced operating costs. Reduced emissions help manufacturers meet increasingly strict regulations. And improved efficiency allows hybrid systems to deliver better performance without requiring larger batteries. From an engineering perspective, these are massive advantages. Perhaps even more remarkable is the speed at which Chinese automakers have climbed the technological ladder. According to industry production data, China now accounts for roughly 1/3 of global automobile manufacturing. The country has become a center for battery production, software development, and advanced vehicle technologies. Brands that many Western consumers had never heard of a decade ago are now competing directly with some of the most established names in the industry. And Geely's journey perfectly illustrates that transformation. A company that began with refrigerator components in the 1980s eventually acquired Volvo, invested in Lotus, launched premium electric brands, and developed one of the world's most efficient production engines. Few business stories in automotive history have unfolded with such speed. Of course, this doesn't mean internal combustion engines will dominate forever. Battery technology continues advancing rapidly. Charging networks are expanding. Solid-state batteries and new energy storage systems could dramatically reshape the market over the next decade. But that's exactly the point. The future isn't a single road. It's several roads running side by side. And while the world has been focused on one revolution, another one may have been quietly happening in the background. Because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs aren't the ones everyone expects. Sometimes they come from companies that were underestimated. Sometimes they emerge from engineers obsessed with solving problems others considered impossible. And sometimes they remind us that innovation rarely follows a script. The automotive world is entering one of the most competitive periods in its history. Companies are battling over batteries, software, artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, and energy efficiency all at the same time. The winners won't necessarily be the companies with the loudest marketing campaigns. They'll be the ones capable of delivering technology that genuinely improves the lives of drivers. And if the last few years have taught us anything, it's this. Never underestimate how quickly the automotive landscape can change. Because somewhere in a laboratory or engineering center that most people have never heard of, the next breakthrough is already being built. And when it arrives, it could once again change everything we thought we knew about cars.